So cycles of concentration, easiest way I can explain that is if this is a pot on your stove at home, right? You boil all the water off. You get the little white residue left in. You fill more water up, you do it again. You get more white residue, you do it again, right? So if you do it 3 times, we would say you have 3 cycles of concentration because you've taken what was originally in that water and have now concentrated 3 times in there because I did it 3 times over. Same thing's happening in your boiler. We're taking feed water, which is gonna have a conductivity of whatever it is, right? And we'll test that. Let's say it's 100 for easy math. And in our boiler, we're gonna have a couple thousand on our conductivity, right? So we wanna try to run that as high as we can safely because it maximizes the use of water, right? We're gonna use less water. If I have 10 cycles of concentration in my boiler versus a boiler that's running 5 cycles of concentration, at 10, I'm literally using half as much water and chemical as I am at 5, right? So the goal is you want to try to get it higher to reduce that stuff. Now, that doesn't mean you can just close the valves and never ever drain water out of your system and run your conductivity to 20,000, right? So ASME has guidelines. We can't exceed 7,000 conductivity in a boiler, and we're not supposed to exceed 700 total alkalinity in a boiler. And the reason being is at those levels, you run the risk of having boiler water carryover where water actually is going to leave the boiler and not just dry steam. And the potential for scaling it up, fouling it, everything increases the higher we run it. So there's a trade-off, right? So a typical Lake Michigan soft water boiler, I would say we probably are going to run in the neighborhood of 3,000 to 4,000 on the conductivity. If you had RO, maybe we could push it to 5,000, 6,000, but that's kind of really the upper limit that you want to go. The higher you go, yep, the more cycles. So running 50 cycles is a lot better than 10 cycles, but running 100 cycles compared to 50, the payback is so small, it's not worth the risk of running that high, all right? So that's where you'll rely on your water treatment partner to kind of determine where you can safely run, that you're going to maximize the use of the water, but you're also gonna minimize potential issues from running too high, all right? So we always start with conductivity in a system because, again, in theory, if it's in range, everything else probably is going to be in range. If it's high, everything's probably going to be high. If it's low, everything's probably going to be low. All right? So this is a pretty simple test. Do we have, look at that, my slop bucket. All right, I don't want to dirty the floor up here. All right, so we'll want to grab a sample. We'll want to go ahead and rinse this cup out a couple times. All right, and then we'll want to read. And so on this meter, this is an old school one. They still work great. You might have one of these in your boiler room. We're gonna hit this black button and see what it gives us. All right. The only downside of these ones is it's not a digital reading. And when you have a very low number, right, this is sub 100. What is that? So we also then, look at that. We did update at one point. So you maybe have a digital one. This is a pretty basic one. I have you might have one like this. Right, so I obviously have a little bit nicer of a meter because, well, I do it a lot. So this is digital, TDS is, conductivity is a measurement of TDS. They technically are different readings, but yes, for the person. So like mine can do conductivity, resistivity, and TDS, right? This one is only gonna spit out the conductivity, but we're controlling in conductivity, so that works. So if you have one like this one's pretty simple. You just stick it in, you hit the button, right? It's turning on. It's gonna start blinking fast, and then we're gonna let it sit there, and then it's gonna start blinking slow, and once it's done, it's gonna spit out a reading for us. $69.2, what a number. All right, so 69, right? This was sub 100. I can't tell exactly what, but I would say it's reading pretty accurately. Or maybe you have one like this, right? And again, you can, maybe you'll have an easier time. So I'm getting 66. So the good news is they all look to be, I know mine's accurate because I calibrate it regularly. These ones are reading pretty accurately too, which is good, right? So that's good quality feed water, I would say. Incoming water, all your softener is gonna be like 300, 350. So the fact that it's 66 tells me we have more condensate in that feed water tank than actually fresh water, which is good. We wanna get as much condensate back in our system as we can.
What would be your accurate numbers, the most common numbers to get when you're testing?
It depends. It really depends. Like if you get 99% condensate back, maybe your reading's 30. Or maybe I have customers where it's 300 because they basically get no condensate back, right? Maybe they're doing direct steam injection, so it's 100% fresh makeup and they don't return a lot. It's gonna be higher. If you have RO water, it's going to be lower than if you just have soft, but it all is really gonna be dependent on how much condensate you get back. So if we're 300 coming in and we have 60, 66, let's do 50 for easy math, right? So that's 6 times less. So that tells me, if I did the math, you're getting, 80+% condensate return, which is pretty good, right? You're probably getting 90+% condensate return. The chemicals are gonna add a little bit of conductivity to the water when they get added.
So is that the ideal range for condensate return, or is that a question for CC?
So in your feed water tank, it's gonna vary. I would say 60 is great.
Okay.
That's awesome. If it was 150, I would say, if it was 300 in your boiler, I would be like, well, that's okay because it doesn't really run, right? So every location, it's going to be different. And that's where, you're going to look for me or someone like me to kind of tell you what those ranges are going to be, right?
Okay.
Based upon how your system runs.
Okay.
And every single plant's different. Some run great, some don't run so great. So the ones that run really well, you're probably gonna have a lower reading. The ones that don't, or maybe just, they don't get a lot of condensate back because of the process. Like I have a customer, they make breadsticks. Most of their steam is used in proofers on the dough, right? Well, they don't really get a lot of condensate back from that process. They get very little actually. So our feed water conductivity typically is higher because it's a lot of just fresh water going in. It's not condensate coming back.
Okay.
It's not bad, it just is what it is,
Okay.
right? There's nothing we can do per se about their processes the way that it is. All right, so we did conductivity. If we had our log sheet, I apologize that I didn't send that over. We'd write in 60, we'd say, okay, hey, life's good, right? I probably would have on there like a max of, let's say, over 150, then maybe we have a problem, right? So you'd write in 60 and it'd be good, you'd move on, right? The most important test that we run in a whole boiler room, right? We went over it.
Alkalinity?
Hardness.
Hardness, okay.
All right, so hardness is the most critical test to run out of everything. All right, so these are pretty simple, these drop test kits. They really are typically only like 3 to 4 steps long. Add a couple drops of this, couple drops of this, color change, read the number, right? So not anything super difficult. So we'll go through this. I know everyone can't see it, I'll read. Oh, I lied, she printed everything. You have an awesome instructor, all right? Because I didn't think to do that. I didn't bring those sheets.
Color though.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, that's not her.
MATC
probably doesn't let her print in color, so save money, right? All right. So you're looking at the instructions. Step 1, right? Rinse the vial 3 times with your sample, and then fill the 25 ml mark. So this is a brand new cup, so I'm not going to rinse it 3 times, but the reason you want to do that is because as you start to use it, if there's any potential residual, you just want to make sure that that's not going to give you a false answer, right? It's going to skew it one way or the other. And then the key always with doing tests is if you think it seems like a goofy reading, you should just retest, because the chances are you added something wrong or there was something funky or whatever, and it probably isn't really an issue. So I always encourage, if you get something weird that doesn't make a lot of sense, always retest. That's the easiest way to prove if it really is out of range or not. So we're gonna fill this up to the 25 milliliter mark. All right, I'll probably have to go get more water at some point. Okay, so you wanna look at it and you wanna look and see, so I poured it right to the 25 mil mark. Look at that. So we'll go to step 2 then. Add 5 drops of our hardness buffer and mix. So you're gonna look in here, you're gonna have one that's labeled hardness buffer solution, okay? That's what it's talking about. And so we're going to go ahead and add 5 drops. This is, if you accidentally add 6 drops or 7, it's not going to ruin the test. A thing to note is you don't want to hold your dropper bottle sideways like this. This tip is designed to give a specific amount, and when it's sideways, it's probably going to give a smaller drop than if I hold it vertically. So you want to hold it straight up and down, okay? And the more you do it, the easier it becomes, because they do maybe come out faster than you're ready. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then just swirl to mix it. So that's step 1, or I should say step 2. Then we'll go to step 3. All right, add 1 scoop of our hardness indicator powder, hardness indicator powder, and swirl the mix. The sample will turn red or purple if there's hardness present, blue if there's no hardness, right? So if it turns really pink, it doesn't turn red. But if it turns, in my opinion, if it turns a really pink color, you have hardness. If it turns a pretty deep purple, you have a little bit. And if it turns blue, you know you have none. And we want, how much hardness do we want in our feed water tank?
1 scoop.
None.
Yeah, 1 scoop of this, but none, right?
Oh, look at that. Purple, red. Pink.
So, we got some hardness. All right? We will test the softener again too and make sure. It could be working. There's, whatever, we'll go through that when we get there. What could be wrong if it's not working? Okay, so it's pink, right? I don't think that's red. I don't know why I say red. That, maybe I'm colorblind, but that's not red to me. All right, so then we know we have some hardness. So if it turned blue, we would be done, and our answer is 0, right? And you write down a 0 and you move on. We, on the other hand, don't have 0. So we'll go to step 4. Add trace hardness titrant, 1 drop at a time while swirling. Count the number of drops until it goes from that red, pink, purple, whatever, to blue, all right? And so this one, in a boiler, we're looking for 0. So this is, each drop is only half a part. So if I add 1 drop, I have 0.5, 2 drops, 1, right?
Okay.
There's test kits out there that 1 drop equals 10. But in a boiler where I want 0, if I add 1 drop in it, is it 0.2? Is it 9, right? I ideally don't want to go over 1. 1 max is typically my control limit, all right? Before I say, okay, I got to look at what's going on. So we're going to, again, add this 1 drop at a time, 1. The slower, or the colder the water sample happens to be, the slower the color change occurs. 2. 3, okay, it's starting to turn a little bit. 4, okay, it's getting more purple. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Purple.
All right, blue. So 9 drops.
So
All right, so then 9 times 0.5.
4.5.
4.5, right. So 4.5 parts per million of hardness. Elevated higher than we want, but again, Lake Michigan water coming in is 140. So I'm gonna guess the softener for the most part is working. It could have been just the initial fill. You might have exhausted the softener quicker than what it could keep up with. So we put a little hardness into the water. But we'll test the softener, right? So obviously you can see it's clearly blue. Now, depending on where you're at, you might not get this nice of a color change. Typically the worst quality of the water that's coming in from the city, so Waukesha, Madison, anywhere west of Milwaukee where they get Lake Michigan water, it might not turn that nice of a color, all right? So you might be like, man, it never really changes from purple, right? Like it went from pink to the kind of this purple and it never changes. So on the back of this card, there's a little tip. Interferences. Metals may cause difficulty in seeing the endpoint. If metal interference is presumed, add 1 drop of the titrant to the sample before adding buffer or indicator, and then include that in your end calculation. That will help get a better color change. So if we had hardness or something interfering, I would take my titrant, which was the final step, right, step 4. I would add 1 drop in before I do step 2. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna tie up any potential metals that are in the water. That will actually help you get a better color change. So just keep that in mind as a little tip, is if you're testing in your facility and you're like, oh, man, I really can't tell. It never seems to go blue, it just stays purple. Something's interfering, right? So if you do that little hack, it might make it easier for you to get an actual true color change where like we know that's blue, right? Unless you're colorblind. So, all right, so we did conductivity, 60, good. We did hardness, 4.5. It would be red. Right, on my control range, I'd have 1 max and be saying that's too high. So that's gonna spin into why is it high? Where is the hardness coming from? It can only be 2 locations. Feed water tank. What feeds a feed water tank? Condensate is 1, or it'll be soft or RO, right? So you know, because your feed water had elevated hardness, it's got to either be your condensate that's causing the issue. Maybe you have a contamination, right? You have a heat exchanger in the plant that's leaking and you're getting hot water on the other side leaking back in, and that might have elevated hardness compared to what we want in our boiler. Or again, hey, my softener or my RO or something of my pre-treatment is not working as it should, right? So this would spin me into, okay, I need to dig into what's not working out of the softener and the condensate and try to figure that out.
That's what we got going. Our heat exchanger is gone. It's
Right.
It's over $100,000 for them to
Sure.
come in and
Yeah, it's not cheap typically, but then the question is, why did it fail? So that's a whole other question.
The building is, I don't know.
Old.
SCJ, they're more about appearance than actually maintaining.
Okay, interesting. So, and again, maybe it's just, hey, it's 50 years old, I had a failure, it is what it is, right? Or maybe it's like, no, something's wrong, one way or the other, right? And there was a premature failure because we didn't have good water treatment in place, or whatever. You superheated it on accident, right? And you caused it to crack, or whatever the case. It could be a number of things, right? So, okay. So we know we're gonna have to validate in our condensate and in our softener if we're getting hardness or not to try to determine what the problem is. All right.
Can you show us like a missed test or something, like when it turned red or something? You able to do that here today, or?
So that was a missed test in that it turned blue eventually, but I only want to be 1 or less. We were 4.5.
Okay.
So that is an error or an issue. We'll grab the softener and condensate, and we'll try to see if we can figure out which one of those is giving us maybe high hardness. I'm guessing it's the softener, but we'll test those and see. And we might find like, oh yeah, the softener is putting out 20 parts per million of hardness. Well, I wanted to put out 0. We know that's an issue, right?
So
and then
this test would be blue?
no matter what, at some point it turns blue. So when you get to the end, when you get to how much hardness you actually have in the water, it'll turn blue. Whether it's 0, 1, or 1,000, if I just add enough drops, at some point it's gonna go blue. It's understanding when it finally goes blue, that reading, is that okay or not okay? So if it would have turned blue right away, it would have been 0, that's great. If it would have turned blue after 1 drop, that would have been 0.5 parts per million of hardness, I would say that's okay. Mm-hmm. It turned blue at 4.5 or after 9 drops, that's too much.
Okay.
So like that is a problem that we'd want to try to address in the boiler. All right.
So that's where we was at right now.
Yes.
4 drops?
Yep. We had 9 drops in, and we know that's too much.
So even if you just put 2 drops in, you clear that?
Yeah. Anything again? The anti-scalant in there is designed to handle some hardness. It's just we can't put 100 parts per million of hardness in the boiler because whatever I put into it, I'm concentrating. So if I'm running 10 cycles of concentration, we have 4.5 parts per million of hardness in our feed water. That means we have 40 in our boiler. So if we're putting 100 in, we have 1,000, right? And then at that point, chemistry cannot handle it. Like it can't overcome that much stuff in the water, right? So that's why we're okay with some. 4.5 is high. I wouldn't be freaking out like the world is gonna end, but it's like, okay, we gotta figure out where is this problem. Now, if this would have been 100 today, I'd be like, holy shit, we gotta get on this like right away, right? 4.5 is we gotta dig and figure out what's wrong and figure out what the solution is, but you know, the world isn't ending today as a result of that, all right? So another test that's always good to run in your feed water is, you can do alkalinity. We're not gonna run alkalinity in your feed water today because again, we're not really gonna do anything to impact that. We will run that in the boiler. And this is confusing. So I also don't have operators do this a lot because not that I'm smart and you're not smart. It's just, unless you do it a lot and start wrapping it's just confusing, right? So if I told you there's alkalinity, but alkalinity can be in 3 different forms, O, P, and M. What one do you want in your boiler? You want more O. How do we get O? We have to figure out the P and then multiply it by 2 and subtract the M, and it gives you your, it just
So just
gets
a little
more,
bit more work, that's all?
it's more work, it's more confusing, and again, in a program like this, truthfully, where you can't control it. You won't, there's nothing you can go do right now that's gonna change this reading. I don't have you run it because you're not gonna do anything. I run it because I do wanna make sure we have enough O alkalinity in the boiler, but I normally don't have customers run it that aren't running RO water because they're not adding a chemical to directly impact this. If you're running a boiler that has RO water, you're directly adding something to impact this, then I would tell you gotta
So
run
if
it.
you're not running RO, don't even worry about it?
Typically, right. We'll do it here because I want you guys to get exposed to it, but again, if I was in your facility and you only had a soft water program, no RO, I would not be having you run alkalinity on your test sheet, right? Because if anything, it might just leave you more confused about what's going on, and it's not something you're gonna, again, go turn on a pump or turn one down or do something to really change it. So, but one that is good to run is iron. So let's grab the iron instructions. One of these. Yep, perfect. All right.
So eventually you're gonna run the P or the.
Yeah, in the boiler we will.
Okay.
I always run alkalinity in feed water and in the boiler. But again, I think that from a troubleshooting perspective for on-site operators, it's not super critical. For me, there's some more kind of nitpicky details that it's nice to run it and understand it, which is why I always do it. You know, again, if you feed too much sulfite, you're gonna lower your alkalinity. So what does that mean to you? That might not mean much, but to me, I can tell, okay, hey, we added too much sulfite. I see that our O alkalinity is lower in our boiler overall. I know I need to reduce my sulfite because its impact. It's taking it to a level that I don't think needs to be done for on-site day-to-day testing. Once a month when I'm on site or whatever, that's adequate. It's kind of how I view it.
Especially the boilers that we have,
Yep.
are temporary boilers.
Sure.
So, I mean, they're just...
Yeah, and every company is different. So whoever you're working with might have you be doing that, right? And it's not wrong to do it. I just think it's a waste of your time.
I don't even think there's RO hooked up to that. I know there's RO throughout the other facilities.
Right.
Hooked up to
Right.
it, but that one I don't think it
Okay. And maybe there will be though when the permanent boilers go in place. No, it's just soft water.
So that building is an old hospital. They've been telling us that they're going to tear it down.
Yeah,
Supposedly
okay.
There's 2 years left on it.
Right.
Who the hell knows?
Got it. Okay. So the classic, spend no money on the building because we're gonna mothball it, right? Okay. So let me grab this out.
But I've been with my company for 3 years.
Now, this iron test is obviously much more basic, right? It's a color change test that we're gonna look at visually. Again, you might have, you might have something more like, maybe, you might have more of a digital meter that I can, add a packet, it'll change color, and then this is gonna give me a reading though, right? So for the purpose of MATC, this is pretty expensive. That's not expensive, so that's why we're doing this. But you might have something, maybe not this fancy, but a meter, right? That's gonna digitally tell you an answer, not have to hold it up to the light and determine, right? But for the sake of what we're doing, this works just fine. All right, so. Okay, yep, that's just the reagents. All right, so this is pretty simple. We're just gonna read the steps, right? Starting with step 1, use the proper test cell. There are 2 different test cells used in the slide comparator. The 11.5 mil test used in most tests and the 5 mil test used in tests requiring shorter view paths. Both test cells are used in the Inslow base. Glass 5 mil test tubes are used in the pH base, all right? So we are running the Inslow base. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna find here that here's what we're using, okay? Take off this cover. All right, so go to step 2. So basically it's just telling you got to determine what you're running. We're gonna be running this one here, the 11.5 milliliter test, all right, which are these vials. So go to step 2. Always place the test cells with the frosted side facing you, right? So you can see this side is frosted, this side isn't. You wanna make sure the frosted side is you because that's gonna determine how the reading looks, okay? So again, a lot of these tests is just setting it up properly and you should have no issues. Use the 3 test cells for each test. 2 should be filled to the mark with untreated sample, what's in my cup, and placed on both sides of the center compartment of the comparator base. The 3rd test cell is used for treating the sample with reagents and is placed in the center, right? So the 2 outer ones, we're just gonna fill up with water and do nothing with them. And I'm gonna have to go get more water quickly. All right, these are what, oh, and good thing you printed it off the, sure, that would be awesome if you're willing to do that. Thank you very much. All right, so one of them we got filled up to the 11.5 milliliters. So we'll put that one in on the left side, right? And on this one you can tell there's 3 slots that perfectly hold these, right? So that's what we're gonna put them in. All right, when he gets more sample, we'll fill up the other 2. And then we'll move to the next step. So while he's doing that, right? So after we do that, great, they're all put in there. Then align the appropriate slide on the comparator base for a color match. All right. Sorry. Let me put this away before I get it ruined. And this, we actually have a nice testing area here compared to some places you go and, you know, you're in this dark, dingy boiler room. It's not lit well. You know, I'm putting it on top of an old dirty drum or something, whatever. So this is actually nice to have a nice workbench to be able to do this. Thank you very much. Perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill up this one. Okay, to the 11.5 mil mark. I'm a little over it, but that's just a blank, so it's not really going to impact anything one way or the other. And then this one's going to be our sample where we're actually going to look to treat it, or not treat it, but add the reagent. So this one I went a little over. So the longer you do this, you learn the flick, right? So I can get it pretty accurate just by flicking out a little bit. So there's 11.5. That comes from doing it a long time. All right, now, let's see, next step. Iron reagent 1 and iron reagent 2, okay? Now, here's the interesting about this specific one. There it is. Okay, so you have to then find, so those are general guidelines. Then there's actually going to be this one here that's going to say color comparison test, iron 0 to 2 ppm. It's somewhere on your sheet there. Second page, okay. So again, and these ones are actually, well, this is good to have. That's more long-winded and you don't care. So this is, what I'll do is I'll put like a star with a Sharpie. This is the test instruction in this kit. You want to just, you'll go to this one right away. So rinse and fill 3 vials, right? Like we did to 11.5 mil, right? Put the 2, put all 3 in with the frosted facing you. Use a 1 mil pipette, add 0.5 mils iron reagent 1 to the center test cell, cap and mix, wait 5 minutes. Okay, so on this one, because we don't have to use a 1 milliliter pipette, we're just gonna add drops. All right, so each drop is 0.1, so you're gonna need to add 10 drops, okay, of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, so that's our reagent number 1, and it just literally says iron number 1, cap and mix. Okay, then this is where what I would do normally, because it's like, okay, you gotta wait 5 minutes, right, is I would then actually look to, okay, I got that prepped. I'm gonna move on to doing a different test right now and not just stand there and twiddle my thumbs for 5 minutes because, I got other things to do. If you got some time to kill in the boiler room for whatever reason, right, do that. So why don't we just for fun, we'll do a side-by-side of my meter versus what we're gonna get on that. All right, so I'm gonna rinse this out. Make sure that I don't have any contamination from whatever I was testing up the charter. Okay, for this one I fill to the 10 milliliter line. All right, I put it in my fancy dancy meter. I choose an iron test. I zero the meter out with what we call the blank. And then I go ahead and I take and add an iron packet to it. And if there's any iron, it's gonna turn orange.
So what you think is orange?
Made out of what? Steel, iron, right? Black pipe. Right. You don't really have aluminum, you don't have copper typically, you don't have a lot of that stuff. You have mostly iron. So if we can maintain below a certain level of iron, we know that we really can't be having much corrosion occur because we would have a higher iron level, right? So my meter again, it counts down, it's going up, 0.25, 0.26, 0.28, right? And so we'll let that go.
How long do you have to wait until that? 5 minutes?
This is a 3-minute test on mine. This one's saying 5 minutes. So, and again, it could just simply be.
Well, you gotta wait the 5 minutes, or
Yes. Now,
yes or
Show me the
no?
ropes.
Yes.
Show me the ropes.
yeah, you do. I'm not going to teach you shortcuts.
Technically, you do, but you-
All right, we're going to do everything by the book, just like when you do.
You had something in your eye.
Yeah, exactly. I just had a blink eyelash out of my eye. So the nice thing about when you get a nice meter like this is, I would tell you, I don't need to wait the full time because it shows me this nice little graph. So once I start to get to a point where for 10, 20, 30 seconds, the reading doesn't change, there's no reason to wait the additional 90 seconds or minute and a half because it's pretty much gonna stay around 0.43, 0.44, 0.45, right?
So
It's not,
technically, you didn't wait the 3 minutes.
I'm not gonna wait because the nice thing about this meter is it allows me to know right now it's no longer changing, which means it's not gonna change anymore, right? If you don't have this meter, in theory, you don't have a way to validate that, but that is a nicety of having an expensive meter.
How much do one of those cost? One of these?
$2 grand, 20, something like that. I mean, again, what's expensive,
Let me
right?
go to the pawn shop.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Pawn shop?
So, all right. Yeah, they'd be like, what is this? You know, you're gonna have to,
$5, buddy.
yeah,
Come on.
right. They don't care if it's $2 grand because they'd be like, who the hell is gonna buy this?
Right.
Right?
That's true.
Only someone like me, and there's not a lot of people. So it's still going up a little bit, 0.51, right? Now, it's probably been 4 minutes, it's close enough. So we're gonna go to step 2 on that, okay? So step 2 is using a 1 mil pipette, add 0.5 mil reagent, or add 1 mil reagent of number 2, cap and mix, okay? So number 2, and then again, that's gonna be 10 drops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we're gonna cap it and mix it.
So that goes to our orange too then, right? Is we doing the iron? for
This
that
one's gonna turn purple actually. But it should turn a color. All right, and then again, it's saying to not wait at all, which is interesting.
You didn't wait 3 minutes.
So we'll give it a minute. So I have 0.56 again on mine. Okay, so you're gonna put this in there like that. Now, here's the hard part, right? Is you gotta try to find good light. I would actually take this off. This is why, in an ideal world, you don't rely on this stuff anymore, right? Because there are meters that will more accurately. Because again, this is all perception. So what I might think it is might be different. Than whatever, right?
You just use a phone line?
Right, that's what I said.
Yeah,
Can
you could use a phone. Look at you,
Here we go, right?
or a flashlight if you got one. Look at that. There we go. So just shine that over the top of them. And then what we want to do is we want to basically slide this to where our middle one kind of matches what we see, right? So like on this one, for example, so this white line is what we're reading, right? So to the right of it is 0.1, to the left of it is 0. And you want to move it along these lines, right? So now this one, it's going to be 0.1 and 0.2, and try to match the center one to what you're thinking, right? So I'm going to go and say that we're all the way here. So it's between 0 and 0.1, which is great. And again, mine could have been higher. Either one, because it's a little more accurate. B, I might have gotten some of that little crud in my test that is going to skew it slightly, right? But I think, again, this middle one looks like, you know, somewhere in here, right? So low. And I do think it's actually pretty low just looking at the water. I do think that that little bit of stuff can go a long ways. When we're talking 0.1 part per million, right? It's not even 1 out of a million parts. That's such a small number that any little bit of residual that you maybe get in your cup can skew your test, right? So that's pretty good. I would be happy with that. Typically I want to be 0.5 or less in a feed water tank and a boiler, right?
So that would turn purple?
If there's going to be iron, right? It's going to turn
Would it be orange or purple?
a purpley. This one's going to be
Orange.
purple. Mine's orange just because of the type of packet. You can get packets that do different colors. Mine just happens to be, yes, your short should turn purple. Hopefully it turns nothing. That's great, right? So we don't want it to turn, but if there
This
was,
one didn't turn nothing at all, did it? Because it turned
No.
purple, right?
if there's iron, and again, like I said, see those little chunks in there? If I maybe got a little chunk in my cup, it's enough to throw that off without a
But did
doubt.
it turn orange?
Yeah.
Orange?
Right? And that's a pretty faint orange. I mean, if it was like 3, which would be a lot of iron, it'd be like orange.
So you was
orange.
looking for this type of purple?
Well, I ideally want it to be this, nothing, 0.
None.
We want none. If we have no iron free floating around, We know we're not corroding anything.
Okay.
And I actually think that, truthfully, it is lower than what I got. I think I got some of that that's sitting in the bottom of it, and it's gonna screw it up. So, that's the iron test, all right? So pretty simple. They're all pretty simple, right? Just go step by step. Any questions on how to run this test for you guys? Otherwise, all you'll do is you'll return these. You'll cap this.
So when we be practicing doing all this stuff, we gonna have all these type of materials and stuff?
This is all your stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So this is what you're gonna be doing. This is how you learn how to actually do it, is actually running the test, right? So we'll put these all back. That's our iron test.
So we're not gonna have to perform that iron test in the boiler because
Correct. If it's good in the feed water,
it's gonna be good.
it's good in the boiler. Well, not always, but it should. Yes, it should be 99.9% of the time. But can you have something goofy going on in your boiler specifically? Sure. But
Yeah.
your water is going to be orange. You're going to know in your boiler if you're getting iron issues because it's going to be orange, right? You'll see it visually. Where when it's only 0.1, 0.2, you might not see that with your eye without doing a test. All right. So we've done conductivity. We've done hardness. We've done iron. The last thing we'll do again. Is DHA. Correct, thank you. And the reason we do DHA, so okay, in a normal program where you're running sulfite, you're gonna test sulfite in your boiler, not in your feed water tank, all right? DHA, we test in the feed water tank, not in the boiler. Why? I don't know off the top of my head specifically. It doesn't truly matter to me why we test in the feed water tank and not in the boiler, but we test in the feed water tank, not in the boiler. Take my word for that. I would have to honestly try to dig technically why that matters. It doesn't really impact me one way or the other, right? As long as you test in the right spot and get the right answer, you're okay. There is some scientific reason why you don't do it in the boiler. I believe it's because it doesn't give you a true answer because DHA will leave with the steam. So I'm trying to validate that I'm feeding it originally at the right amount and then knowing that when it gets in the boiler, some of it's gonna be leaving. I believe is the reason why. All right? So DHA, this is the most difficult test you're gonna run. Not terrible, but it is, again, another color comparator versus if you have a meter, right? This meter can do a DHA test as well, and it just leaves less up to my eyes.
I did not swap out that small one, so you
Oh,
said
yeah,
swap
okay.
it a large one.
Let's
I don't know
see,
if
let's
that's
just make
expired.
sure. March of 23, so it's still okay. Why we sent that big of a one? Probably because I didn't specify size. That's like a life supply. That'll go bad before you ever use it.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Okay, so DHA, we're really gonna focus on these 4 steps up here: sample preparation, and then we're gonna do the high range measurement. Okay, is what we're looking for because we want to run like 300 to 500 parts per billion of DHA. So to do that, you need to run the high test because you're gonna take your answer times 17, right? This wheel only goes up to 80 on the high side. So if I'm trying to get, let's say 400, I need to obviously multiply it by something to get there. So we have to run the high range test. So now, we're gonna grab out our little vials. All right, I've already marked them. If you have glass ones like this, let's say you had this kit, I always mark one with a B, one with an S, right? It tells you to do that so you know one's your blank, one's your sample, because you're gonna add different things into them based upon if it's your sample or your blank. All right, so thoroughly rinse 1 mixing bottle of sample and fill to the 25 millimeter mark, write S on it. So this one's gonna be our sample. All right, so we'll fill it up with a little bit, we'll rinse it. And here's what I can tell you is the last time this was run, and it's not any of you, this wasn't rinsed out right. So you can see there's some dry stuff left over, right? So that could interfere. That this is already turning slightly pink purple, right? Which tells me again, there's old stuff. So you always want to, when you're done with your test tube, ideally you want to kind of rinse it out and not let it air dry with, what was in there. All right, so we'll fill this one up. So I rinsed it twice thoroughly. I gotta get more water. 1 second, everyone. The only problem with where I'm grabbing the sample is you can't really get your cup in there very well because it's so close to the ground. So again, that's where long term we would get a sample pouring out the bottom of that feed water tank so we can actually, I could fill my cup. I wouldn't be grabbing sample after sample, right? So one way we can improve operations here. All right, so we fill that up to the 25 milliliter line, that's our sample. Now I'll do it again with this one, and this is gonna be our blank, okay? So again, we wanna rinse it out a couple times. See how, again, it wasn't properly rinsed, so it turned purple right away. So just make sure when you're done, ideally you would have, like, you should go to the store and buy a gallon jug of distilled or deionized water.
Some demineralized.
That's the same thing, yep. And then, like, when you're done with this test, you would rinse this out with that, so we make sure we don't leave any of that residue behind.
I don't drink this
Well, you're gonna wanna rinse that second mixing bottle.
Yes, both, yep. Well, for running the test, we can rinse it with our sample. When we're done running the test, we'll wanna rinse them both out with this for storage. Then we know there won't be any residual from the test. So I've rinsed both now with sample, current sample thoroughly. I'm now gonna fill up my blank to that 25 mil line that's marked on there, and then we'll go to the next step. I do not drink distilled water. Yes, just like RO water is consumable, but the reason why, where I live, I have a well. All right, and I just drink my well water. It's good quality water. I like the taste of all the minerals, and our body needs minerals. So you're drinking distilled water. There's nothing in that. So you're not replenishing your body with minerals drinking this. So in my opinion, you could drink a gallon of this and still feel thirsty.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you right here.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
For that sample bottle B,
Yes.
thoroughly rinse a second mixing bottle with demineralized water that contains no oxygen scavengers
Yep.
or ferrous, and fill it.
Oh, you're right. Thank you for catching that. Because the blank, if I use this,
We'll have no contrast.
correct. It'll turn purple too. So thank you for catching that. And in my little kit, I have a little
You have
squeeze
your own
bottle in there
supply. Okay.
of RO water.
Not a problem.
So you
I just wanna make sure that I'm,
Yeah, sorry, on the blank. Thank you for catching that. And that's true. Yeah, look, she got me. I don't run DHA as much as I run sulfite.
we need
I really
numbers
don't.
for our stuff.
Right.
That's why.
So, but she's right, because if I fill the blank with the sample, Jeff, I was distracted. If you fill it with the sample, you should expect both are gonna change the same way. So then how can you measure them? This, by rinsing and filling it with this, it shouldn't turn color because there's no DHA present. So then we can get that difference in color when we stick it in here to see how purple it is, right? So thank you for catching that. Well, whatever, I was
So
distracted.
you got a well in your backyard, or you go to a neighborhood well?
We just have a well in our backyard. I live out in kind of the middle of nowhere. I'm out in the country.
Where's that?
Maguanago. And then kind of out in the...
You know where that's at.
Yeah, exactly. It's about 35 miles from downtown Milwaukee, west. You know where Waukesha is?
Yeah.
Okay, so then like southwest of Waukesha. Again, I got chickens in my backyard because we have space. Kind of farmland. Exactly. Okay, so we filled it up with the 25 mils. This is why you got to mark them B and S, because otherwise how do you tell the difference between those two water right now, right? So add the contents of, so we go to the next step now that we've got our 2 sample bottles ready. Add 1 DHA, 1 reagent powder pillow to each and swirl. So you have these little powder packets. We're gonna add 1 of these to each bottle. All right. So they should tear pretty easily for you. And then you just want to go ahead and add 1 there and add 1 here.
Yeah, so we're in the high range.
Yep, high range, because again, we're gonna want like 300 to 500. And again, this thing only reads to 80. So the only way you're gonna get there is by diluting. All right, so now that you did that, swirl the mix. Okay, and actually, there should be in here, if I'm not mistaken, a cap. Because like this one, you can see the powder. I wanna try to dissolve that down. So you should be able to actually, I would cap them so you can actually really kind of mix them and get a better mixing. Okay, so now we've done that. Okay, so now step 4. Use the dropper and add exactly ½ ml of DHA2 reagent to each bottle. Swirl each bottle for 5 seconds to mix and start timing the test. Okay, so here's our DHA2 reagent. All right, so you add the powder first, then the liquid. And you have a little dropper here. Okay, and now here's what I'm gonna do. You can use this. This is maybe harder to do. So Jeff's gonna upgrade your kit. I'll save it in case you lose, but let's do this instead. All right, and this is brand new. I just grabbed them from our office the other day. Okay, so this is a 1 ml syringe. You can easily measure out 0.5, right? And not, this you can do it, but you got whatever. It's just, that's a little harder.
What do you have to clean it, the other one as well, after you're done or no?
What I normally would do then is I would, yeah, you can see there's kind of some staining from this drying out on it. Will it impact it? Maybe, maybe not. I would actually just take a little bit of this and kind of just rinse out the, this when you're done. So we're gonna fill it up. Now here's the key, right? Typically when you do this, there's always a little air bubble. So right now, we have to take that into account. So I always, if I'm adding ½ ml, I always fill it to 0.6 and then I push it down to 0.1. And then I eliminate caring about that air bubble. Otherwise, you just gotta make sure you empty it out and then suck up and don't get an air bubble, which can be tricky sometimes. So I normally put the little black, the bottom of that black stopper on the 0.6, and then in both, you're adding 0.5. So now I'm gonna push that down to 0.1, and then whatever is left, yeah, 1 little drop, which probably wouldn't impact the test, but we're gonna follow the instructions. So then again, I'll push it to 0.6, and then from 0.6, I'm gonna push it down to 0.1. All right, now let me cap this. Put that back. Okay, then I would do this again.
Tap it, shake it.
Yep.
Tap it, shake it.
And now we start timing. So this is, again, unfortunately, it's kind of a long test. So if you read, it's a 10-minute wait time.
10 minutes.
Yeah, so you're looking now at the high range measurement is the step that we're gonna go to. We don't care about low range or mid range. We only care about the high range because, again, where we're trying to maintain it. So again, now we can do the rest of the prep work while we're waiting on that to cook. All right. So remove the long path viewing adapter, insert the color disc, which is already done. You can kind of skip that. We keep the color disc in here. Okay, so rinse and fill a tube to the bottom line with solution B. So you got these 2 tubes in here.
What a mess.
Yeah, don't put the caps on it, they're easier to grab. Okay, so you have your 2 little, and again, these weren't rinsed out either. So let's rinse those right now with some blank or distilled water.
With some blank.
Well, yeah. It's got nothing in it. Technically, it is blank. All right, we'll do it once more just to make sure.
So you feel distilled water not good for you? I heard it was pretty good for you.
I just think it's good from you from the perspective of if there's contaminants in the water that you don't want to drink, like, let's say radium or something, then yeah, it's pulled out. But it's not good in that it has no minerals your body does want. Like your body wants calcium and magnesium and iron and silica. It wants all that. So that has none of that in it. It might just mean that you gotta make sure that in your diet, the food you're eating is gonna actually put those back in your body. So I won't say it's bad for you. I just feel like I grew up, my parents always had RO water in the house, which is not as pure as this, but much more pure than me drinking out of my well right now. And if I go to their house now and I drink that water, I feel thirsty, right? Versus if I drink a glass of water from my well that has all these minerals in it, I don't feel thirsty. I feel like it's...
Still always refer back to the great outdoors, the movie.
You're right. Yep.
You may get the shits from the well water.
Yeah, you could. You could. You should get it, right? That's why you test your well water and make sure that it's okay. I've never had any issues at all, so...
Now, do it taste like, kind of like eggish well water?
No, that would be if you have sulfur. So if you have a lot of sulfur in your water, then yeah, it's going to be that stinky rotten egg smell and
I went
taste.
camping in Oklahoma walking.
Uh-huh.
It was a well at the Indian.
Yep,
Well.
and it was smelled.
Yeah.
That's sulfur.
Okay.
That can happen. I am fortunate. The little pocket where I am or whatever, like ours is good. It doesn't
Okay.
taste too
So
much.
how often do you test your water as well?
Once a year. How often do I do this at home? Never. I once a year grab a sample and get it tested for different types of like bacteria, right? Like E. coli, you don't want to drink that or whatever, and make sure that it's not contaminated that way. I have never tested. One, I know how much hardness is in the water in McGuanago because.
You should do it 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
So you got a well, like you got to pump it? Or you
No,
gotta bucket
there's a
down
pump. There's like I just go and open up the sink, you know, and water comes out. I'm not that. Yeah. There is a well in my yard. You can't see, it's all below ground. There's a pump down in there that when you open up, you know, the faucet inside, right, and it flows water, the pump kicks on and pumps water out. Yes.
Because my granny, she used to go like somewhere like, I really don't know. It was like over the big home bridge. She used to get
Okay.
the spring
Yep.
well water, and you used to have to go grab a whole
Yeah.
bunch of milk jugs. And
Yep.
just fill that
So
shit
that
up.
sounds like in Big Bend, which is again kind of out Waukesha way. They do have a natural spring where yeah, you can just, it's always flowing. You just go and fill up,
Yeah.
and it's good quality water. I would drink that. I do
That
drink
shit
that. I
sucks.
just drink that at my house.
Grab like 6 milk jugs a
Yep.
person.
Yep.
Fill it
And
up.
fill it up, exactly. Make your you know, your weekly trip or whatever. So you can see this is starting to turn slightly purple compared to this one, which again, it's a slow turning test. I think it's going to be low, but the hard part is, so how do we normally decide when to feed chemicals, right? Most places feed chemicals one of two ways. One, either when your feed water pump is on and pumping water from the feed water tank to the boiler, it just turns on the chemical pump and it spins. The other way, which is how I believe we are doing it here, unless something's changed to my knowledge, is as we add in fresh soft water into the feed water tank, there's a water meter that spins. When that water meter spins so many times, it sends a pulse signal over to the little controller on the wall. The controller then says, hey, you need to turn this pump on and run it for a minute or 2 minutes or 30 seconds or whatever. So again, the hard part here is you might find like this is gonna be low. So I'm probably gonna say like, we just need to turn that pump on and run it to get some in, because you don't really go through water. Again, this boiler does not run the way a normal boiler really will run. So we're gonna find that today, the only way to get this up really is either purposely just dump a boatload of water out of your boiler down the drain, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing, or just manually running that pump in hand. And I can show you how to do that on that controller, and it'll run it for 10 minutes and then shut it back off to just artificially boost it. And that's probably what you're gonna have to do. So you'll come in, you'll do your test. If it's low, you're gonna turn that pump on and run it for 10 minutes in hand and boost that level up, all right? And that's kind of how we're gonna have to handle that, because you just, again, you don't really have any demand for that boiler. What, it kicked on for 3 seconds so far for the hour we've been in here or whatever. We're never gonna feed enough chemical the normal way when that's how it kind of runs. So again, not a,
It should run the better way.
well, there's not really a better way to make it run, unfortunately. The only way to make that run better is to run the boiler. But you can't, because you don't have any demand, right? There's no demand. You're calling for 2 pounds of pressure, and basically the system stays at 2 pounds of pressure all the time because it goes nowhere, right? It goes here. So it's cool. It's awesome to get hands-on experience. It's challenging because it doesn't run like a true boiler would run. Boilers are designed to be on and running at like 80% load kind of all the time, right? They're workhorses. They want to just run. This doesn't. So it makes it a little more challenging. Because as the water sits, that feed water tank is going to suck air into it, right? It's not sealed, so it's going to suck in oxygen. That means it's going to react with the DHA and just use it up before it even gets into our boiler and does anything. So the only way we can overcome that here is to just feed more product, because you don't have demand to just make the system run the way that it should run. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so let's fill these up now. I'm gonna rinse this one more time because we have some purple still hanging out in that one. I don't want it to skew our results.
I don't think I've ever had a test to see how test has never been a very large contrast. Is that supposed to be more purple?
Yeah, it would be more purple if we probably had, 500 or whatever where we want to be. It would
I've
be.
never come close to that.
Yeah, so that's just simply a matter of we have to run that pump more.
Okay.
Like you're just
Can
gonna.
you adjust the setting instead of running for a 10-minute span? Can you?
We can. You can't. I don't believe on that controller because it's pretty basic. You can't change the hand time limit.
Alright.
You could turn it into hand and you just time it yourself for like 2 minutes and turn it back into auto.
Okay.
Newer, nicer controllers, you can actually say like, when I turn it into hand, I want it to run for 1 minute and 30 seconds
Okay.
or 3 hours or whatever. This one is just, that's a pretty basic controller, so you can't.
Okay.
It works great. It's a good brand. It's very basic. So, all right. So we'll fill these up now. Okay. So we want to fill it up. We're just filling it up to this bottom line, right? It says here to the 5 milliliter line, which is that bottom. Well, it just shows you a lot. It's 5 mils, but it just shows you your arrow. It's the bottom of the frosted part. All right. Okay. So that was our blank. So we're gonna put the blank into the left side, okay? And we're gonna take our sample now and put it into the right side. All right. And if you're ever questioning it, obviously the blank's gonna go on the side that starts turning purple because you need the wheel to turn it purple. Your sample that's going to turn purple on its own is gonna go on the clear side. That doesn't change as we change the reading.
So why would you need a wheel to make it turn purple?
Because the blank, right, is clear. And the only way, how we tell what this level of purple means is we need to compare the wheel to our sample. So this is our sample here that is slightly purple itself. This wheel, as I spin it, right, and here I'm up to 70, is a lot more purple, right? So that's why.
Okay.
You need that wheel.
The shade, okay.
Yeah, the shade, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
I see it now.
And so this wheel in here is going over this one. All right, so again, if you took your self, it's gonna be low, without a doubt. But if we do this, right, and we can let everyone come over here and try to decide for themselves what they think it is. Again, downside of this is it's very subjective. So I have my thoughts, I'll let someone, whatever, everyone.
What are your
someone else can
thoughts?
look and decide what so go up there here. And then what you'll do is you'll rotate this wheel around, right, and make a decision like, do you think that is equal to that, right? Obviously you want to get them to match. So,
There we go.
yeah, so you're probably like in that area, right?
So like 2.5.
Nope, so what's that say?
pH meters.
Oh, hold on. It's going to be, it's about, right, 5,
Okay.
10 maybe.
Okay.
Something like that. So someone else, whoever wants to look can come look, by all means.
This one?
Right, so then you just spin it and try to match up the right and the left.
Just the colors on them.
Yeah, exactly. You just want the. Oh yeah,
Kinda hard
and
to
yeah,
tell
maybe
without
that's.
the lighting, yeah.
Oh, you can touch it. Go ahead. It's low. It's like
Yeah,
10 or something.
yeah, that's what I was
Is what I would say.
Pretty close right in there, yeah. That's what I was thinking.
So, all right. And again, if someone else wants to look, but you're just trying to match them up, right? So it's going to be low. Oh, look at that.
Is there like a digital one of these tests, or is it just?
Yeah, this can do it, right?
That
So
can do the same thing?
this, look how many. This thing can run hundreds of tests. Look at all these, right? There's tests in here that I'll never even run. So this can do a DHA test, right? So there's DHA right here. So I could have done it. I could have used the same reagents, and ultimately, that's the iron. But then it would turn purple in this too, and I could use my meter to give me the reading. Right. So there are advantages to using meters versus trying to debate. Well, is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 30? Right, depending on again lighting and whatever else. So I would say it's like 5 or 10. Okay. So let's go with it was 5 because you're never going to be spot on perfect with that. So, right, read the result. If the match is between two segments, use the middle value. So between 5 and 10, so they want me to use 7.5. Well, we're going to do 5 for easier math. So then multiply the value in the scale window by the applicable factor from table 1. Results are in micrograms per liter or parts per billion. So table 1 then, you'll find it says multiplier factors, all right? We're testing for DHA, which is diethyl hydroxylamine. Say that 10 times fast, right? But there's other types, these are all different oxygen scavengers. Erythorbic acid, hydroquinone, methylethyl ketoxamine. And you'll never use mica or hydroquinone or erythorbic acid more than likely ever in your life, because those are kind of very specific for very specific applications. Paper mills maybe, high pressure power plants, stuff like that. So we're gonna do DHA, that first one. And remember, we ran the high range test, all right? So we need to take our answer here, right? So let's do 10 actually for easy math. 10 times then our multiplication factor, which is 17 on the high range test. So what's 10?
70.
170, right? So if it was 5, that's half of 170, right? So again, we want to be like 3 to 500. So we might be, so we're obviously low. So it'd be like, okay, so we're low. We need to do something about that, right? And again, how we're going to do that on this is we're going to run more of that product specifically. Normally you would test conductivity, sulfite, a polymer or internal treatment, right, and alkalinity. And your guys is because, again, we're testing the DHA, which is the active thing we want to test for on this product. We're testing the feed water. All we're going to do in your boiler is conductivity, alkalinity.
No pH.
No pH because, again, if the alkalinity is where it should be, that pH is going to be where it's pH and alkalinity directly impact each other. It's not worth the chemistry lesson to try to explain that.
Is that for any boiler?
Any boiler what? That we don't test pH?
Yeah.
I would say yes, because again, if you have a healthy amount of O alkalinity, your boiler pH has to be above a certain level, and above that level, I'm not concerned about corrosion. Some chemical providers will want you to test the pH of the boiler. Again, I just find it's a worthless test that's not going to tell me anything that I can't infer from the alkalinity.
We're going to still do pH tests on
Okay,
all of it.
that's fine. We'll do it in the condensate today when we're done.
Okay.
And you can do it on all of them just for practice,
Yep.
right? I just always, like real world, if this was a customer of mine account, I would not have you be doing that in the boiler.
What about the other way around? Could you test pH and not give a damn about alkalinity? Is it probably the same?
In theory, yeah, but I want to know, so if your pH is above 10.5, let's say, how much O alkalinity do you have? You could have 1 part per million of O alkalinity, right? Well, I know that for the product to work, I need to have like 150 minimum. So it's more important for me to know the alkalinity, and then know that if I have enough O, my pH is going to be where it needs to be. Versus if I know my pH is where it is, yeah, but I might not have enough O. Right? So that's why I would tell you that this is more important in a boiler. And let me turn my light off here before I kill my battery. All right, so alkalinity tests. All right, we're gonna get confused. This is the most confusing test you're gonna run, simply because you got to remember what you did to go to the next step. So again, rinse this file, right? Fill it to the 25 mil line. It's brand new, but normally you would, right, rinse it out. All right, so we'll fill up to the 25 mil line. Okay. Add 3 drops of phenolphthalein, all right? Pink cap phenolphthalein. The word you can't read.
Severe thunderstorm warning.
Oh yeah? I mean, I saw I was gonna call for potential storms today, but I didn't know it was supposed to be that bad. All right, so 3 drops of this should turn pink. Okay? In a normal boiler, if things are going well, it should turn pink, okay? If it doesn't after you have that step, then we gotta dig into why is that happening. A lot of times that would be too low a conductivity or not running the proper amount of sulfite specifically. Sulfite will drop your alkalinity if you overfeed it. Okay, so it turned pink. Add alkalinity titrant. So let's find the alkalinity titrant. And we're gonna do, you have 1 drop equals 10 and 1 drop equals 50. We're gonna do the 1 drop equals 50 because normally in a boiler, it's, well, before I say that, let me see what the conductivity is. When the boiler is running at the conductivity it should be running at, okay, you're gonna have hundreds of ppm of alkalinity, right? So the boiler is 840. It's gonna be a little low. We're still gonna do the 1 drop equals 50. And the reason being, because if we do 1 drop equals 10 and I have 300, you're gonna add 30 drops versus me adding 6, right? So it's all about, you can stand here and do it all day if you want, but I don't wanna stand here all day. So we're gonna add this 1 drop at a time until it goes from pink to clear, okay? And then that's our P alkalinity. So 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? 4 drops, right? So 1 times, or sorry, 50, because 1 drop is 50 times 4 is what? 200. 200, all right, we gotta remember that. So this is where it gets a little tricky. So step 3, we just determined our P alkalinity. So you would write that down, right, and say we have 200 on your sheet. Now we go to step 4, okay? We do not dump this, we continue on. Add 3 drops of total alkalinity indicator. Oh, there's everyone. Wow, tornado warning. All right, nothing like boiler testing in the middle of a tornado. We're fine. It's all good, we're good. There's glass, we're safe. I'm not worried.
Those ones that goes outside and see if I can see it.
Yeah, exactly.
Until the lights go off, I don't give a shit.
Right. I used to live like way southern Illinois when I was little.
I'm like you. I don't see no cars flying.
And there was tornado warnings all the time, and we would always go outside trying to find it. So yeah, don't go in the basement until you see it. All right, so step 4, or until the lights go off. So again, do not dump this out. Oh, Kristen, you're
I think it's because of that warning.
Oh, look at that thing! It's powered. That's insane. She's got all the gadgets and gizmos. Okay, so now we're gonna add 3 drops of this. It should turn green. Okay, 1, 2, 3. It didn't turn green. What's that mean? Okay, this is where it gets confusing. So it's not wrong. It's not bad. Okay, let's assume it turned green. Okay, because I want to go through step 5, and we'll end up getting to the same endpoint. That's fine. That's the ultimate endpoint. But God, this is so confusing. All right, I'll try to make this as simple as I can. P, M, O alkalinity. P and O alkalinity are a portion of M. M is your total alkalinity. Okay, so that's fine. We want that to be our endpoint. Step 5, it goes back to pink. What that means is if it didn't turn green, our endpoint is that, right? So our endpoint is 200, okay? If it turned green for some reason, we would then have to take our titrant again and add drops for it to go from green to pink/red. Then you need to factor in and say, okay, well, I was at 200, and let's say I added 2 more drops for it to go from that green to red. Right? So 2 more drops would be 100 more parts per million of alkalinity. So I'd have to take the 200 plus 100, 300,